Chicken chaser? Do you chase chickens?
Hello, I'm in a forest. So you might have noticed a few weeks ago that we interviewed Peter Molyneux, presenting him with a collection of every game he's ever made, from Populous to Dungeon Keeper to, of course, the Fable series. Now, he had plenty to say, as you'd hope, but one thing in particular stood out to me when he was talking about the very first Fable game.
Very originally, it was called Wishworld.
Oh, okay, right. You can probably tell by my response there that I did not know that Fable used to be called Wishworld. I did know, however, that for a time it was called Project Ego. That was the code name used during Fable's development, and I've always quite liked that name. The word ego gets right to the core of what Fable would try to accomplish. It was all about the players and what they wanted to do. Instead of controlling a predetermined character, they decide what kind of hero they wanted to be, whether that was good or evil or a touch of both. But Wishworld, I mean, I suppose that sounds like something you might call a fantasy RPG. Maybe it was another temporary name like Project Ego was. Or perhaps it wasn't.
Imagine having these different wizards that battled away against each other on the landscape. Nothing like Fable was finally.
Okay, so not just a placeholder then. Wishworld was something else. Something with wizards, apparently. But what does that even mean? How could it not be anything like Fable? Was it not an RPG? Did it not have characters with really big gloves? Fortunately for us, about the same time we published our interview with Molyneux, a team of ex-Fable developers working on a gorgeous little game called Kinseed started posting screenshots and GIFs to Twitter. Not of their new game, however, but from what they described as a working, yet flaky, build of Wishworld itself. Turns out the team's design director, Charlie Edwards, had been looking after this super early prototype since Lionhead shut down in 2016. And it has to be said, without him, this little bit of history could have been lost forever. So, thanks, Charlie. And I should also thank him for letting me visit his home up in West Yorkshire to take a look for myself. Not only did I get to play this build, I also was able to record the gameplay. And so, almost 15 years after the release of Fable, it's my pleasure to present to you a People Make Games world exclusive. Here, my friends, is Wishworld. I mean, if I'm totally honest, I had hoped for a bit more than this. Charlie's build offered a variety of different test levels, with names ranging from Mountain, to Scenic, to Simon, to, well, there's one just called Crap, actually. It's unclear whether that was a description of the level's theme or its quality, as it wouldn't load. In fact, very few of the levels did want to load for us. This small village that you're looking at here was perhaps the best of the bunch that we got up and running, although even that would break when I saw that there was a spell called Comet Shower and immediately tried to cast it, because how could you not? After rebooting and avoiding the temptation to cast it again, I did find flashes of Fable here as I stomped about the place, I suppose. The chicken chasing children, the medieval European theme, the very name of the village that we were exploring. But I'd come here hoping to find something else, something surprising. Despite being promised wizards, the character I was controlling looked more like Guybrush Threepwood than Gandalf the Grey, and unless I wanted to crash the game, he could only really manage one spell, a drab-looking fireball that materialized from his feet. The thing is, right, it's not like I was expecting this build to be super fun to play. I knew it was from very early on in the game's development, and in fairness to Charlie, right there in his first tweet, he did describe it as being, well, a flaky build, which I would say was a fair assessment. No, my problem was that this played almost exactly like how I would imagine an early build of Fable should. If you told me this was Project Ego rather than Wishworld, then okay, that would make sense. But to quote Molyneux again, this Wishworld idea was meant to be nothing like Fable. And so I decided to get to the bottom of this and talk to the original designer of Wishworld. That's not Peter Molyneux, by the way, although he's often referred to as the creator of Fable. In reality, he's one of its co-creators, as is a man called Dean Carter. Along with his brother Simon and an artist called Ian Lovett, Dean had been the one to pitch Wishworld to Molyneux in the first place. And so I asked him about this build that I'd been playing.
I think that build actually sits probably around the period where we just got funding from Microsoft for the first time, and we had to show we were actually doing something rather than just writing countless version 1s of documents.
Okay, but it was actually Wishworld. I know that's what the build was called on Charlie's PC up in Yorkshire, but surely there's more to this story.
It was still called Wishworld for a very brief period, at least in my mind it's very brief, maybe right, because it's years ago. It was still called Wishworld very briefly, but we also knew it needed to have another name because it wasn't really doing the Wishworld stuff anymore.
Right, yeah, so it wasn't doing the Wishworld stuff anymore. Well, what was that stuff meant to be? Dean Carter, the co-creator of Wishworld, what was your original concept?
The player experience was going to be quite simple. What would happen is you would be in the academy and you would be challenged to some kind of duel. You'd wander through a doorway into one of the many voids, which had very slightly different flavors. And you would have picked your archetype by this point. So it might be anything from a Victorian gentleman to, at one point, there was an angel and a small girl called Penny. So it was Penny and Ishmael. You would be there with your set character, and they would have a particular strength in one particular kind of magic.
Sorry, one final interruption here. This is kind of difficult to visualize without any screenshots or gameplay of Wishworld, and although I've got some stuff from the original design documents, I don't think that's going to cut it either. So, Annie, would you mind doing a little...
And so you'd appear on this big, blank, very threatening-looking, vast rolling sea of black sand. And then the first thing you do is take a deep breath and you would focus your will and you would grow a section like that. And all things that would normally erupt from the terrain. So if it's a forest, trees would start to erupt and little mushrooms and bits of grass and whatever else. And the closer you got to kind of the center and the deepest parts of that terrain, the biggest, most interesting things would be created. So you'd first of all be running around, transforming this landscape. And if you were after, fire magic stuff, you'd be cracking the ground open and lava would start to rise, and then little mountains would come up and they'd turn into volcanoes. And in the deepest, darkest, nastiest bits of landscape, there would be these little things that would pop up, and these would be your spells. And you could cast any spells you wanted as long as you had these little orb things. But different kinds of terrain also allowed you to summon very different kinds of creatures. So let's say, for example, you wanted to take out the guy who he's over there. You can see more lightning cracking over there, and there's fire in the distance. You think, okay, it's probably some fire stuff happening here. Well, why don't we do some water stuff here? So let's create some lakes, and okay, we've got some water spirits, and why don't we get some mermen or something sitting in this lake waiting for him? I'm going to make every one of them impervious to flame. Then I'm going to grow them to 5 times their size, and then I'm going to ride one into battle. I'm just going to take the fight to him. That's what we're going to do. So that was really what the game was going to be like, all this landscape erupting all over the place with you and how many other players were doing it. And more weird things being generated as more and more territory was claimed. And for me, like the ultimate cool bit of every single session was you going into the very, very center of the enemy's territory where his heart thing would be, and taking it out and knowing that he's probably protected that, up the wazoo. And also seeing what kinds of magic he decided to use, because it could be anything from wandering to a little Victorian town to a big desert to a really, really deep vine-wound forest. For me, the idea that no two games would be the same and you get these very, very different kind of play styles emerging from it was very, very intriguing and interesting.
You know what, that is nothing like Fable. And in the end, Dean told me that although there was interest from publishers, they never landed a concrete offer for this vision of Wishworld. And together with the rest of his team and Peter Molyneux, they decided to reshape the game to make it more marketable to those companies. They decided that the game should be more character-led, and initially thought about a storyline that centered around a more Merlin-like sort of hero, but the team never got too excited about that concept. In the end, they realized, you know what, let's allow the players to decide what kind of Merlin they actually want to play. And in that moment, well, I guess Fable was born. Whether or not Wishworld could have lived up to that original idea had they found the funding, it's hard to say. It certainly sounds like an ambitious concept, but that doesn't matter. I love hearing the vision behind this stuff. In those earliest days, before a game's concept has been altered by the reality of actually getting it made and marketable, this is how it started in its purest form. This is the game that would eventually become Fable. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please do let us know. And there's plenty of other things on the channel, like that interview we mentioned with Peter Molyneux himself. Maybe take a look at that. It's a good trip down memory lane, and I think you'll quite enjoy it. Cheers. And finally, today's video was sponsored by Skillshare, which is a website for getting better at things that you're not very good at. Like, for example, magic tricks. Listen, because Wishworld was a game that was going to be all about magic, and it's a reasonable segue. I've decided to do a magic trick to end this video. You can't stop me. Just like I can't stop the first 500 of you from taking advantage of a 2-month premium membership to Skillshare free of charge by using the link in our video description. Skillshare offers online tutorials not just for magic tricks, but also video editing, photography, writing, bookkeeping, game development, and all sorts of other stuff with a premium membership to the site, usually costing around $10 or £7 per month. Alright, time for Chris's magic trick. Are you ready? I am. I've even got a magician's hat here, which, yep, does not fit my large head. Okay, good, we'll leave that there. This is something I learned on Skillshare last night, so if you like it, maybe check out that website. If you don't, then please don't tell them I'm including this in our sponsorship message. Okay, in front of me I have a selection of poker chips. Interesting, just normal poker chips. I'm going to pick one up at random, like this green one here. Just a single poker chip, as you can see. Now, haven't we all been there, sitting around the poker table, thinking, you know what, I really wish I had more than one poker chip, because that's not very many poker chips, don't worry about my hands. And you just think, gosh, if only there was some way of magically turning this one chip that I have in my hand, just the one chip, into 2 poker chips. That would be quite something. You know what, if we try hard enough and maybe use our magic wand, they didn't do this in the video tutorial, but I've added it as a little bit of a flair. Just tap it, just tap that one chip, concentrate really hard. We can perhaps turn it into 2 poker chips. Wow! How did I do that? Magic! And also Skillshare.com, which link in the description if you want to take a look at that offer. And if not, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye!